Hi, and welcome to my channel where we explore what recovering from spiritual, emotional, physical, and religious abuse looks like. I pray over this community that we may all have breakthroughs of the barriers put on us by colonialism. I wanted to make the title of this video How My White Grandmother Tried to Use the Beliefs of a Cult to Beat the Black Out of Me and my sister. But truly, this video is actually an airing out of something that I thought I would never get to talk about and truly unpack to the depth that I want to. My maternal family, Donna and Sarah Hoffman, raised me and my sister in the Church Universal and Triumphant cult, and we're talking about it. Obviously, I've talked about it to therapists, friends, partners, so forth. But I've never really had the time to put down the memories that are so random and come up so randomly that I just can't get out of my head. And I need to see and share about how through all these stories, how I actually did regain my own life and break generational curses. How being okay with any religion is a struggle after, fighting your way out of a cult. And how my identity as a Black person is doing with all this, and how my spiritual identity is now developing out of the healing I've done around that abuse. So to dive right into it, I was raised from 5 to 16 by my mother's adopted mother, Donna, and her oldest sister, Sarah. This is the white part of my family. As I said, they were in a cult called the Church Universal and Triumphant. It was a really popular cult late 80s, early 90s, or in the 80s and early 90s. So it was just after my 5th birthday that my mother took me and my sister on a plane, leaving our father, basically just stripping us away from our father and our entire family so that she could basically just give me and my older sister to her abusive mother, the mother that she tried to run from and who she hated. That's how deep and dark abuse can run in a lineage. My mother, an adopted child, just gave up her kids because her adopted mother told her she couldn't be a good mother, and she just believed it. My mother never really worked through and released her own childhood traumas, so she basically just handed us the same situation. Anyways, my mom didn't take us from our dad because she wanted to raise us or because she loved us. She just knew it would hurt him. And she cared about hurting him more than she cared about what happened to us. Back in the late 1980s, early 90s, Black men were not awarded their children in divorces, especially if the mother was white. And I'm glad that now it's different and it's changing. But at that time in American history, when my mom told my father that he would never see his kids again, she thought it would be true. Tammy is my mom. Was more into men and having men and letting a man tell her what happiness is more than anything else in the world, more than she was into anything else in the world. I think she actually hated women, LOL, to her born daughters, right? Because she hated women because of her mother and older sister. But the abuse and control that she received from the woman in her life, she projected onto her partners, wanting a man to be her keeper. So after leaving my father, she absolutely wasted no time in getting a boyfriend, taking a month-long trip in Alaska with that person, and then getting a job and making sure that she was out of the house. In fact, she joined AA for my grandmother's bullying. Grandma bullied her into joining AA. I, to this day, did not think my mom had a drinking problem until it was made into one, basically. So, of course, in AA, she meets the love of her life, whom she continues to this day to choose over her health, her self respect, her redemption, and her children, everything. And that pretty much left her the majority out of our lives. But we'll also talk about the stories I have of her and her husband, too. In 1990, my older sister and I were left up to the two people who were known and named abusers in my mother's life. So, grandmother, Donna Marie Hoffman, old school white woman from the 1930s Depression. She, along with her children, lived in Alabama for 14 years, and most of her kids were raised there, including my mother. She went through cancer, and because she was close to dying, she made that her whole personality, and in fact had published a book about it. Like, one of the first things she told me and my sister upon getting to live with her, that we were all gonna die. We were gonna die, and death is horrible and lonely. She almost died, and both of our parents are gonna die. So comforting, right? Like, not at all comforting for a fucking 5 and 7-year-old child who had just been ripped away from their entire community, including their father, who actually liked us, you know? Anyway, Donna took the casual and assumed racism of her time in the South and mixed it with her German immigrant, natural, stoic, and punishing upbringing to serve us up all of the hatred possible. So me and my sister were previously raised on the East Coast with a Black family. We were rambunctious kids, especially me. Like I said, it was the late 80s. We were used to running the streets of our dad's neighborhood. We had family or people that treated us like family on every single block. If we were doing something stupid with our cousins on one block, somebody would be yelling out the house, I know your dad, I'm gonna call him right now, blah, 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 right? Actually, really good community that cared about us. So even when our parents started fighting a lot and separating, which I felt most of my babyhood that they were together, that they weren't really together, you know. But even though our parents were fighting and separating, I still remember feeling safe. My mom and dad were both there, and also our entire family. Our cousins made us laugh. Our aunties fed us and let us into their makeup. Our uncles and our dad's friends had kids take us to the pool all together, you know. We were never alone, even though it was a difficult time. We were experiencing still a childhood, a family, warmth, love. We had freedom of expression, all that type of stuff. So, of course, when we get to Donna's house, all of the way that we were meant that we were not good enough, right? We didn't enunciate well enough, walk in a high class way, or have the coping skills of an adult white person. And so she proceeded to beat us and emotionally shame us until we could speak like her, read like her, find fault with every single thing, especially ourselves, just like her. And I believe from that, she planted her anger in us because that was the nurture we received, right? The nurture was her anger. And it took both of us a really, really long time to stop being angry at her, obviously. But honestly, the cult part was really just a backdrop, the game plan, a structure to place us in. She ultimately was the voice over the household. So for the astrology girlies, I have a Pisces grandmother, judgmental, gossipy, critical, emotionally manipulative, and isolating. Also taught me how to read at a college level by the time I was 10, and it was not fun. Virgo aunt, Sarah, right? Organized all of these saved magazines that they had from the past 20 years, grouped alphabetically and also by a year. She was the type of person that would get you into a logical trap when debating and then make you grovel for forgiveness and say that you were wrong over and over and over again. Also taught me how to build bookcases and taught me how to do my taxes when I was 16. So there. Okay. Anyway, being in a cult and being with a narcissistic caretaker means that you have to be isolated. And if you don't do it naturally, the cult tries to program your mind to think that this religion makes you better than everyone else and you can't possibly be connected to anyone else who isn't following the truth, right? So if someone says something you don't agree with, you're given permission and encouraged to just emotionally lose it and start cutting people off, because disagreeing with the cult is equated with disrespect. Disagreeing with Donna was equated with disagreeing with the cult. Those two were like locked in our childhood. So we were extremely isolated by these people. And while my sister and I didn't believe in any of this or that it made us better because all we felt was worse, our caretakers did, and they were not afraid to put anyone else down at all. Some of the ways that they isolated us, homeschooled from the time we got to them, not allowed to talk to anyone on the phone, especially our father. We're not allowed to talk to him alone or privately. They would listen on the other line. This was still when people had landlines. I'm sorry. This is back in the day, okay? And then grandma would listen on the other landline, and Sarah would be like sitting next to us, like monitoring, right? So we were not allowed to speak to any other children our age, especially our cousins. We were only allowed to speak to the adults that Donna and Sarah wanted us to. Our existence was made very performative, meaning we had to be happy all the time or pretend to be. We had to give hugs to all of her old friends, especially the old men that would like pinch our bottoms and pat us. Gross. We had to give very cute, sweet little girl like all the time. So, and Donna was a church organist. So, for the first few years of us living with her, she loved, for any slightest thing, pulling down our pants and underwear in front of whole congregations and beating the shit out of us. Loved that. She loved showing people that. And back in that day, nobody accused anybody of shit. They were just like, oh, you beat your kids, bye. And I hope now that's different too. But things that she considered beating worthy would be things like not walking fast enough, not understanding instructions right away, not singing loud enough, the hymns. And we were Missouri Synod Lutheran, those hymns. Oh, Lord, those hymns. She would also beat us if we weren't paying attention to the sermon and taking notes on it. Remember, we are 5 to 10 years old at this time, and no one in the congregation tried to do anything, including the pastor. They just let it all happen. So if we cried, she would withhold food, right? And the entire ride home after church, she would talk about us like we weren't there. Oh, she thinks she's a little pretty princess. We're going to show her. And then when you get home from church, you just sit at the table and watch everyone else eat and pretend like you love that. Like you fucking love it because you deserve to be punished, right? You have to like give that to them so they feel good, right? And like literally my sister and I just wanted to be kids. We weren't even bad kids. But of course, they also took over how we dress, according to the cult, black was an evil color. Brown is the color of poor people, and red was the color of horrors and anger. So they assigned me to wear blues and greens, and my sister was to wear purples and pinks. And everything for the next 13 years that we wore had to be within our two colors. And if you wanted to wear anything else, you were against God. You were just against God for that. By the time I was 9, I knew better than to ask for anything other than what they would give me. Otherwise, like I mentioned before, they would withhold food and a lot of times safety. So, like, if you did something and maybe you didn't even know that you did it, Donna had permission to just like hit you unannounced anywhere at any time. So, like, one time I was like coming out of the bathroom and all of a sudden I didn't even see where she came from. I'm like blindsided by this hit in my head being bashed against the wall. And then I'm just like dragged by my hair into her office. And from there. So their goal basically was to make us forget our family. They made us forget the foods that we liked. They made us detach from our bodies and our own motherfucking divinity. They made us give it all up to like serve them and put their like disgusting beliefs onto us. They like literally put their own problems onto us because they didn't want to bear them. And I don't know if they thought that because they were miserable, they wanted us to be miserable. But my grandmother always had this very like, you need to know how bad it can get, like attitude. Anyway, my mother, Tammy, and her husband, John, also joined in on the fun, right, of jeering at us when we would like cry for our dad and our family. And they would both be like, you think your dad loves you? You think your family cares about you? You're not even really Black. All Black men are abusive. Black people are disgusting and should use birth control. You're mostly white anyway. Why would you want people to think you're Black? And that was like the attitude. Excuse me. It still makes me emotional to think about it because it's like they literally wanted us, small children, to hate ourselves just as much as they hated themselves before our brains could even do anything yet, So it's just like, whew. They got us isolated so young that, of course, we were easily bullied. And okay, so they got us so young that we were, of course, easily bullied. Like our safety, our ability to have the basic needs of life depended on them being in a good mood. So while at first, I think for first 14 years, we saw our dad pretty regularly, right? But then Portia and I actually started telling our family, like our cousins and our aunts, like what was happening to us. And that started a whole thing when we had to go back on the plane. So when we got back to Seattle and all of this was like blowing up, they wrote scripts for us to say on the phone to our dad and basically threatened our ability to have a home, food, clothing, any type of love in this world unless we said to our dad that we did not want to see him or our family again. And eventually, they just forbade us from going to see him or our family. And I just remember all of them gathered around screaming in our faces and finally just making us say that we didn't want to go to our father's house, made us say it to him. And when my sister could not get out the words on the phone, they dragged her off the phone and took her into a different room, and I could hear her wailing however, whatever they were doing to her in there. And then it was my turn. They shoved the piece of paper in my face, and I read the sentences to my father, saying you know, saying what they wanted me to. And then I just went and hid under my bed for like hours and hours, and I didn't want to come out ever. Um, but yeah, shit was like that. And Donna, I swear, wanted to be the actual cult leader because she made us serve her hand and foot. It was like an established thing in the house that if she yelled for something, then you listened or you received punishment. Like, we were slaves. I think when I was like 12, a cherry tree fell in the front yard of their house the day after a windstorm. Donna took the two of us out there. My sister probably would have been like 13, 14. Took both of us out there with her father's saws. So, like, not electric saws, like the, like that. Um, showed us how to saw branches and then left us out there to finish the work. It did take us days, and we were so like sawing through cherry, which isn't that like a hard wood, and we had to even like cut the base of it. Like, cutting the base of it took days. And while I'm saying this, I'm like realizing that I think that's why I think work sucks, because I assume it has to be the worst. Like, I assume it has to be painful. I assume it has to be isolating and something that I hate and something that I'm doing for someone else and not me. And that needs to change. That needs to change. Even talking about this stuff, I can feel the fear racing through my body, just like I did when I was a little guy. I can feel this will never end. I will always be trapped. I will always be a slave. I will never have connection. And yeah, I have done a lot of healing through that, but there's just like, you remember who you were at that time. And I still cry for that guy, you know? But it is true that from that upbringing, I spent most of my life feeling alone, like disassociated from reality. Like, you're in a dream screaming and no one can hear you, right? And I'm so light skinned and raised to mimic white. So a lot of people think I'm white. And I just like walk around holding this whiteness, and it feels like partially I'm drowning in it and partially like it's a fucking gun to my head. I think when I was little, I kept thinking that when I was finally grown up, that I would finally be black. I would finally get to be black. And I didn't understand that when you're not raised, or when you're taken from being raised around all of the cultural identities of being black, like, it just doesn't work like that, you know? It just doesn't work like that. But, excuse me. Anyway, yeah, so when you've been hiding most of yourself, most of your personality, most of who you are from a babyhood, you don't know anything about yourself. So I was learning to socialize at 18 by watching how other people did it. I was trying to decide like what beliefs and actions are okay when I was like in my 20s. I was trying to figure out my fucking personality traits and like what I like, don't like. Who am I now that I don't have to just it's like this other person. Donna was always telling us, you are this, and we would have to like act out what she said. And then when we became older, it's like, oh, now you can actually do it but now you're in the world. It's just, yeah, it's complicated. It's complicated. 3 years, obviously, I've done a ton of work around figuring out who I am, in regards to this background story. How can I fit into Black culture, even though I was forced to be white? And obviously, a lot of different Black communities, including my own family, have welcomed me with open arms. Um, but there is still this block in my head where it's like, if I get to be a part of you, something bad is going to happen, because that's how I was trained. If I get to be Black, something bad is going to happen. If I'm part of a Black community, something bad is going to happen. And not just to me, to them, because that's what was beaten into us. It was literally beaten into us. And for a long time, I was like, just felt very detached. But then I kind of realized something lately which changed my mind, is that my story is the story of my dad's family. Like, my journey was their journey, even though I'm not like super connected with my current family. I am still bonded to the people that were stolen from Africa and brought over to this land. Like, and I feel like I have to give that a voice. It's like I need to face my inner colonizer and expose them so that my own Blackness can be freed. Like, half of my blood like quietly whispers that we have to keep going, that we always dance, we always find beauty, we always survive and thrive. Um and so right now I've just been trying to connect with those ancestral spirits. Like my dad's father and mother, who I did know and have really good memories of. They passed away a few years ago. So I light candles for them. I call upon them when I'm like saying my prayers and stuff. Um, but yeah, it's just like, how can I help my ancestors feel even more free? My ancestors that had to come, that were stolen from their families and brought over here. Like, how can I now, like, give them even more feeling of freedom through, like, how I live and how I carry on our name? And that's what this channel is really about. It's about figuring out my voice and exposing all of the colonizer beliefs that are so insidious and that I know are still inside of me and I'm still discovering and uncovering. And I just want to open it up and express it and release it and be who I was meant to be for my ancestors, and be an example to other very light-skinned and or white people that you can confront colonization and have it be good for you. You don't have to feel just guilt or not know what to do with it. It can actually be really powerful for you to face that. And it's okay to remove that identity from yourself. In fact, you will not be losing an identity. You will be gaining so much more peace of mind and community. And, honestly, it's not just for my father that I want to go through this. It's like, my mother was an orphan who got adopted into an abusive household and never got trapped out of the cycles that she was in. So for the ancestors on that side of my body, I just want to reveal the layers upon layers of like deceit and lies that handed us this tragic story, right? I choose to remove colonization from my white ancestors too. I want to apologize for them and tap into the very ancient of us who were healers and witches before Christianity enslaved white people too. All of me, the very whole of me, is looking to create a different story for our family. So that's my story for today. If you're interested in following my journey through this process and learning and healing with me, then you should check out my other videos that I'll link below. And of course, click like on this video if it gave you any value. Thank you so much for watching. As usual, I am praying for the freedom of all people who are trapped by governments, war, religions, beliefs, and this modern time. All of our healing is intertwined and all of our freedoms are intertwined. So I hope that I'm doing my small part to free mankind.